Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we're starting something new that we've already started, which is we're going to enter into the world of the Shpoler Zeide and Rabbi Nachman. Now, at the outset, what has to be stressed fundamentally, and even more intensely than I'm going to stress it, is that when it comes to the tzaddikim, we know absolutely nothing. When it comes to understanding the true reasons for things or the true dynamics that were at play, that is not something that we have the capacity to understand. Just as Rav Chaim Volozhiner brings down in his Hakdama to his Rebbe, the Groz Perish on Safar Ditzniusa, when we see two malachim arguing, our job is to stand to the side and watch and not to try and apply any reasoning or any understanding of our own. Once we have the proper limitations and boundaries set in place, which are that we are not trying to define exactly what was happening or exactly what the reasoning for something was, but rather we're trying to offer a narrative structure that creates a meaningful way of looking at this, lahagdil Torah ulahadira, to give us pathways of imagination and pathways of interpretation that can enable us to move down the very, very narrow bridge of understanding what it means for there to have been such a machlokes on such a tzaddik from such a tzaddik, such a wondrous, bewildering notion that has just been accepted in a certain way throughout the process of history. We have to open our minds up to the possibility of understanding it anew. But this attempt at understanding and the hermeneutics and the interpretations and the creativity and all of the chidushim and the different ways of looking at different elements that are written, this does not claim to be exacting or definitive in what was taking place or what the intentionality in the minds of the tzaddikim were, but it's an attempt to give a Torah, to be doresh, to search out a Torah that can be mahapech itself into a tefillah, to try and bring this machlokes to its eventual end. Now, this machlokes between Rabbi Nachman and the Shpoler Zeide is so significant for a number of reasons. Number one is we're talking about Rabbi Nachman. We're talking about one of the Yechidei Hadoros. We're talking about the Nachal, Novea, Mekor Chachma, the stream of flowing water that emerges from within the territory of Chachma, that place of Nachama, that place of Menucha, that light which Rav Yaelish of Satmar writes in the beginning of Vayol Moshe, that Rabbi Nachman had a particular way of understanding the issues of the last generation, that it's specifically the right of Rabbi Nachman that is going to be the way in which we make it over the finish line towards redemption. And Rabbi Nachman himself was very aware of this. Basof kulam yu Breslov, and we've spoken about this numerous times, that in the end everybody will be Breslov doesn't mean that everybody who's going to know who Rabbi Nachman was, even though that's happening also. What it means is that a person is going to need, there's going to be a fundamental, urgent need for us to utilize the tools and the spiritual cures that Rabbi Nachman revealed, whether we know it's coming from Rabbi Nachman or not. We are going to need to fight against hopelessness with every ounce of ourselves and ensure that we perpetually believe in hope, no matter where we are. We're going to have to cultivate a mindset of simcha as a way of thinking rather than a way of feeling, and we have to fight every tooth and nail against sadness and against the tendencies towards falling into despondency. We have to begin again every single day, not allow ourselves to grow old in our worship of God or our processing of being human being, not to be encumbered or weighed down by the processes of yesterday, but rather to start fresh with newness, with the possibility of something new. We're going to have to talk to God in our personal language. We're going to have to cultivate a personal relationship, a personal idiom where we can bring every part of our experiences directly to the lap, so to say, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These processes, these tools, these spiritual cures of transforming our learning into prayer, of entering into the vulnerability of a feeling heart, these are necessary for any Jew at the end of history. It just so happens that the soul doctor who brought these ideas down was Rabbi Nachman. And so when we're talking about a tzaddik of the likes of Rabbi Nachman, a tzaddik whose light, unlike other tzaddikim, whose light begins to dissipate after they depart. The light of Rabbi Nachman is a light that is perpetually growing. Manfire will burn until the coming of Mashiach. That the light of Rabbi Nachman, and he knew this, that it would grow and it would grow and it would grow. And we saw in this one of the fundamental distinctions between the Talmud Mufhak of Rabbi Nachman, who was Rabbi Nassan of Nimrov, who basically gives us the world of Rabbi Nachman. Without Rabbi Nassan, we don't have anything. But the question of what made Rabbi Nassan versus all of the other Talmidim, Rabbi Nachman had a lot of wondrous Talmidim. Rabbi Nachman had a Chavraya Kaddish of Tzadikei Yisrael Olam. So what was it about Rabbi Nassan himself that becomes the pen of Rabbi Nachman, to the degree that Rabbi Nachman can say, without my Rabbi Nassan, I don't have anything? We've said that the secret of Rabbi Nassan is that when he saw the light of Rabbeinu, when he saw the light of Rabbi Nachman ben Fega, he was aware that there's something fundamental for now, but there's also something fundamentally fundamental for the future. And in spite of the fact that it's very important right now, and what Rabbi Nachman is doing right now is very important, this is not the end of the process of Rabbi Nachman's light, but this light must be preserved, it must be cultivated, and it must be shared and saved for the future, because there will come a time, a future generation, where these klalim, these principles of fighting against hopelessness, fighting against sadness, fighting against spiritual boredom, fighting against a sense of isolation from God, and cultivating a deep sense of personal bond and connection, transforming our intellect into the vulnerable place of prayer, these are going to be fundamental. It's the only way we're going to be able to survive. It's a medicine that's saved for the makkah that emerges at the end of our generation. At the end of our generation, ikvus of the Mashiach, where the machla is kfira, a loss of faith, a loss of joy, a loss of hope, a loss of our capacity to communicate with ourselves, with other people, and God. A descent down into the darkening territories where a person feels the pulsations of Yeush, where a person seems to have reasons to give up hope, where things seem to be operating in such a way that it becomes so difficult to grab hold of that illumination of simcha that rests at the core of all things. And it's only this medicine that Rebbe Nachman prepared for our generation, for this machla. The only medicine is the medicine of emunah, the emunah that comes with fighting against yeush, fighting against sadness, fighting against falling down into the intellectual territories of coldness, but rather opening ourselves up with a vulnerable heart. This refuah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was makdim to the makkah, this cure that Hashem prepared before the sickness, before the illness, is the Torah of Rabbi Nachman. And the Torah of all of the tzaddikim seen through the lens of Rabbi Nachman, right? We said that we're never only talking about Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman is an individual tzaddik. It's a particular path in Avodas Hashem, but it's also a way of reading. And to learn the Torah of Rabbi Nachman means to learn with a vulnerable heart, to allow the words to cure me. Not to learn the words because I want to know something, not to learn the words because I want to share them, not to learn the words because I think that's what I need to do, but to learn the words because these words are going to give me life. Nachal Navei Makor Chachma, the secret of refuah, the secret of refuah sanefesh that comes about every time the soul feels so constricted and so sick and so stuck in itself. The words of Rabbi Nachman come like life-saving medicine to open us up to remember that we can have emunah here also. We can find emunah here. We could talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu here, no matter where we've fallen, no matter what we've fallen into, no matter how twisted and turned upside down we feel that we are, no matter how tired we are, no matter how exhausted we are. Nevertheless, there's always one fell swoop of a movement that can awaken a person and bring them to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that could bring us into simcha, into emunah, into hope, into tikva, into hispoidedus, into all of the things that Mashiach Tzidkenu is going to reveal to us. And Rabbi Nachman himself told Rabbi Nassan, and in the future, Mashiach Tzidkenu is going to come, and he's going to sit with each and every one of us, and he's going to read to each and every one of us the Megillah of our lives. And the only way that we have that capacity to wait and be patient enough to see that Megillah being revealed to us is through the Torah of Rabbi Nachman. So when it comes to a tzaddik like Rabbi Nachman, it's very important for us to understand everything, as we see that Rabbi Nassan gave us everything, the Talmidim gave us everything, the dates, the times, the processes, the internal expressions, the external expressions. And when it comes to a tzaddik of this stature, and it's true for any tzaddik, all the more so for a tzaddik like Rabbi Nachman, when there's a machlokes, when there is such a big black dot of argumentation and contradiction and confrontation and conflict, it behooves us to understand it. It behooves us to try and understand, what is this telling us? We look at every other aspect of the tzaddik's life, every aspect of the tzaddik's Torah, and we can darshan it from today until tomorrow. We take everything seriously, the derech to Eretz Yisrael, the process that he experienced when he was younger, his relationship with the tzaddikim when he was younger, his relationship with his great-grandfather, the Baal Shem Tov. We discuss and we darshan everything. We could spend our entire lives on one Torah in the Kutamaran. But one thing that seems to get ignored, one black spot that seems to get just pushed to the side as if it was just happenstance, is this tremendous event in the life of Rabbi Nachman, which was this tremendous machlokes and battle with the Shpoler Zeide. And instead of trying to say, what does this say for us? Instead of trying to understand, what does this mean for us? We assume that, okay, that was something that happened and we don't have to pay much attention to it. And so the first reason that we have to delve into this sugya is because if we want to understand Rabbi Nachman and we want to understand the significance of what Rabbi Nachman is giving to us and every aspect of the light of the tzaddik, we have to go into every part of the tzaddik's life, every part that's accessible to us, and try and shine the light of the seichel, try and utilize the tools that we receive from Rabbi Nachman in his Torah and the writings of Rabbi Nassan, which is a clarified medame, which is an imagination that has refined itself to be able to try and uncover some element of a narrative structure that makes sense. We have to apply that to all of the territories, especially the ones that don't look like we can reveal light there. And this brings us to the second reason why this is so important. That Rav Yoelish of Satmar said about this Machlokes, he said about the Machlokes between the Shpoler Zeide and Rabbi Nachman, that it's the fullest expression of a Machlokes l'shem shamayim. That this is the highest level in which we can see the description of Chazal as a Machlokes l'shem shamayim, that is going to bring about light, is the Machlokes between the Shpoler Zeide and Rabbi Nachman. And again, like we said about Rav Yoelish understood the necessity of the light of Rabbi Nachman's Torah. One of the first things that Rav Yoelish did when he came to America after the war was publish Likutei Moharan, because Kisvu Zos L'Dor Acharon, that the end of history is going to need the light of Rabbi Nachman. And the end of history comes about when we're able to refine all of the machloksim, when we can bring shalom into the world. And if we want to try and bring shalom down, we have to look at that fundamental machlokes. And according to Rav Yoelish, the fundamental machlokes here is between the Shpoler Zeide and Rabbi Nachman. So if we can try and awaken a nakuda of shalom, we can awaken the secret of Osa Shalom Mimromav, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates peace above as well. And the peace above is with paradoxes and with contradictions. And if we can awaken ourselves to the desire to find peace and calmness and resolution within conflict, without ignoring conflict, but drawing peace into conflict itself, then by engaging in this process down here, we have the capacity of awakening that process above. And if we can awaken shalom down here in places where it appears that there is no shalom, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu can awaken shalom up there, and he can send down the Sar Shalom, which is the secret of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And this machlokes, ultimately, as we're going to see, the true machlokes l'shem shamayim, is ultimately the machlokes between the two forms of Mashiach, Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, the left side and the right side. And so the second reason that we're going to be delving in to this machlokes is ultimately because it creates for us a place in which we can learn to draw peace into places where peace doesn't appear to be found. And the third reason, which I feel is most significant, for myself at least, is that everything that we're going to be talking about has a medicinal value. That at the core of this machlokes is not some esoteric concept. It's not some differentiation in partzufim. It's all of those things. It's all the differentiation of what the most important thing in Avodas Hashem is, etc., etc. It roots itself in the highest worlds of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's v'shtalshelus. But at the end of the day, there's a very human element at the core of this machlokes. Not the machlokes of the tzadikim. The machlokes of the tzadikim, like we said, is not something that we have a grasp on. But to extrapolate from within the nakuda of the machlokes of the tzadikim and to draw it down into our own individual lives, there's a medicinal element there, and anything that can bring light into a person's avodas Hashem, anything that can help a person come closer to feeling close to Hashem, is worthwhile to enter into. And so for those three reasons, for the fact that we have to understand everything about Rebbe Nachman's life, and we have to believe that there's reasons at the core of everything. Number two is that we have to awaken ourselves to the secret of shalom that comes about by way of conflict itself. No longer can we pretend to live in a world without conflict. The conflict is at every ounce of existence. Instead of pretending that we're trying to find a place beyond conflict, which is just going to bring about more and more resentment and frustration, we have to learn how to draw peace into conflict itself. We can't fight conflict. Conflict is the very birthplace of existence. The tzimtzum is the emergence of machlokes. When it's just purified, singular light of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's no machlokes. Only when there's the light of Hashem, and now there's a vessel of tzimtzum that opens up, that's the machlokes. And so in order to understand, machlokes means to go back to the very inception point of creation, back to the tzimtzum, back to everything that takes shape and gives birth to this worldliness. This entire world is a machlokes. This entire world is a milchama. And therefore, what we have to do is overcome that infantile desire to pretend that there is no conflict and own the conflict and descend down into the conflict and uncover the secret of shalom that comes about specifically from within the conflict itself. And most significantly, the third reason, which is bringing that resolution and that power of resolution into ourselves, to make shalom with ourselves, to make shalom with ourselves and the war within ourselves, to make shalom with our homes and the difficulties that we struggle with in our micro and macro systems, and to make shalom with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who we so often have ta'aromas on and we have claims against, and we have all these struggles. So we want to draw shalom into our lives. And in order to draw shalom down, we have to enter in to the heart of the Machlokes. We have to enter in to the heart of the argument and to the heart of the conflict, because it's at the heart of the conflict that we'll be able to uncover the secret of the Machlokes, l'shem shamayim. Shamayim is Eish and Mayim. It's never one thing or the other. It's both at the very same time. And at the core of Machlokes l'shem Shamayim, that we have to uncover the secret of the Machlokes, which awakens the power of Shamayim, which is the unity of opposites. And at that point, we have the ability of creating a new Shamayim for ourselves. A new Shamayim for ourselves, to open up a new territory in which we have more air to breathe that can help us resolve the conflicts that we walk with, that help us deal with the cognitive distortions and the cognitive dissonance that marks every aspect of what it means to be a human being in this world. Rabbi Nachman says in Torah Samach Daled that Kol Yamai Hiskadalti Bein HaChachamim V'Lo Matzati Guf Toiva Ela Shtika, that all of my days I have grown up amongst the sadikim, amongst the Talmid Chachamim, and I've never found any tool more valuable than silence. And in describing the nature of the tzimtzum, Rabbi Nachman says that this word Bein, this word in between, which represents the separation between the first thing and the second thing, that's the nekudas hamachlokas. That's the nekuda of the halal hapanoi, the place where Hashem seemingly conceals His infinite light and allows for there to be warring voices. It's specifically in that place that a person has the ability to go down and find the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'lo matzati guf tova ela shtika. Over there, the tzaddik goes in and he reveals the silent nigun. The silent nigun is to reveal how, at the core of all paradox, at the core of all conflict, at the core of all discrepancy, which expresses itself in every aspect of existence, there is a burgeoning shalom. And yes, Rabbi Nachman there says the avodah of the tzaddik, Moshe Rabbeinu, is to enter in with shtika, but that's because the tzaddik has the capacity of understanding something, and the only thing the tzaddik can understand is a place of shtika. But because we're not sadikim, and because we're just trying to create a theoretical way of understanding this machlokes, so we're going to speak about it. But all of the words that we're saying are ultimately a process of chashmal, that the words are there just to beckon the individual to that silent place of the resolution of conflict that rests at the core of each and every cell of the individual's experience. And we're going to go into the heart of the machlokes, into the machlokes l'shem shamayim, the spitz machlokes l'shem shamayim, which is this machlokes between the Shpoler Zeide and Rebbe Nachman. When discussing this machlokes, both in censored writings and in uncensored writings, what Rabbi Nachman says in two different ways is that in the end of the day, there's going to be a tremendous laughter that emerges from this machlokes. There's going to be a great laughter that erupts upon the world. There's going to be a great playfulness, a schok noah, that's going to be unleashed upon reality as a result of this machlokes. And this schok, this laughter, this cracking up, is always something that happens when we shift away from our previously held conceived ideas that we know so well and so true, and we open ourselves up to the possibility of things being otherwise. And so this schok that we have to enter into in order to be surprised by Mashiach, because someone whose mind is so convinced as to how the world is going and how the world is always going to go is not going to have any room for the laughter of Mashiach. It's only when we slacken our grip on how we feel reality goes that we allow for the light of Mashiach to enter in, through the open-handedness of the tefach sochik, of the opening of our hands, that allows for the air to move inwards and to crack up the system. This light of laughter, this v'tischak liyom acharon that comes about when Mashiach Tzidkenu comes about, is going to be awoken, and we're going to motivate that laughter even quicker by awakening this schok noah, by entering into this wonderful laughter that Rabbi Nachman said is going to come about between him and the Shpoler Zeide. And the Rebbe, Rav Yitzchak Shlita, writes that this machlokas, this schok of the Shpoler Zeide and Rabbi Nachman, that's going to come from this machlokas, is in truth also something that the Rebbe refers to as the taba'as hanisuim of Mashiach. It's the wedding ring of Mashiach Tzidkenu, meaning to say that the final culmination of this machlokas and the unity that's going to take shape from within this machlokas is going to be the process that we need in order to get us to that place of the chasen of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And again, just awakening the discussion about it, calling it out so that we're aware of it again, so that we can contemplate it, so that we can be bothered by it, so that we can daven on it, awakens all of us to this principle of waiting for the Mashiach, anticipating the Mashiach, and doing what we can do to bring about Mashiach Tzidkenu. And so all I want to discuss today is the preparation to the emergence of the Machlokes. And everything we're saying is based on Chaim Haran, both the censored and the uncensored editions, as well as some of the writings that describe the Shpoler Zeide and his relationship to Rabbi Nachman. But we're going to frame the Nakuda of what we're going to be basing all of our discussions on. And the Nakuda is as follows. The Nakuda is that before Rabbi Nachman decided to try and come to Eretz Yisrael, him and the Shpoler Zeide were operating with a deep sense of shalom. There was a deep appreciation of one for the other. Not only was there not Machlokes, but there was a kinship, there was a connection, there was a unity. And that it's only through Rebbe Nachman's decision to go to Eretz Yisrael and to impart on that wondrous journey, this remarkable, mysterious journey where Rebbe Nachman goes and he descends into smallness within smallness, into all sorts of strange, funny, silly, deep processes. This whole process that Rebbe Nachman goes through, and he makes it to Eretz Yisrael, and he gets to Eretz Yisrael, and he returns from Eretz Yisrael. This was the catalyst to the Machlokes. Before the journey to Eretz Yisrael, there was no Machlokes. Rabbi Nachman and the Shpoler Zeide were able to operate in unison without any Machlokes between the two of them. It's only by way of Rabbeinu's decision to try and go to Eretz Yisrael and to end up in Eretz Yisrael that we awaken this Machlokes. Not only that, but it's explicitly stated that when Rabbeinu was on his way back from Eretz Yisrael and he saw his Hasidim for the first time, he says, "I have brought you a tremendous gift. And the gift that I've brought you is the gift of Machlokes." So not only does the Machlokes get motivated and instigated as a result of Rabbi Nachman's decision to travel to Eretz Yisrael, but in the words of Rabbi Nachman himself, the entire purpose of this journey to Eretz Yisrael was, in fact, to bring out this Nakuda of the Machlokes. So that has to give us pause for thought, that the Machlokes is not seen as something negative in Rabbi Nachman. The Machlokes is not seen as something destructive. The Machlokes is seen as a gift. The Machlokes, and Rabbi Nachman explains this throughout Likutei Moharan in many, many Torahs. And Amir Tashem, when we write about this, and we're writing about this, that it should be out for Rosh Hashanah, that we'll have all of those Torahs there. But for Rabbi Nachman, Machlokes was never a bad thing. Machlokes was a way of bringing out hidden lights that could not be revealed without the Machlokes. That just as there are certain unities and unifications that take place by way of peace, there are certain elements that remain unrevealed because peace is not strong enough to bring them out. One must descend down into that frictional territory of the Machlokes in order to uncover and unleash and reveal hitherto unrevealed potencies, the potencies of Gevura. So Rebbe Nachman is always talking about how Machlokes and those who were against him were never really against him, but they were helping him, because it's specifically by way of the collision that there's going to be a new light that comes out, as we're going to see. But not only is Machlokes seen as a positive development in spiritual revelation in the life of Rabbi Nachman, the fundamental gift of Eretz Yisrael is the gift of Machlokes, meaning to say that there's a principle that can only be revealed as a result of this Machlokes, and it has everything to do with Rabbi Nachman's trip into Eretz Yisrael. And so, even before Rabbeinu's journey, we have two places in Chaim Haran where Rabbi Nachman answers up his Talmidim as to why he's going to Eretz Yisrael. First, a student comes to Rabbi Nachman after Rabbi Nachman had decided that it was time for him to make this trek to Eretz Yisrael, this trek that the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh wasn't able to do, this trek that the Baal Shem Tov had to return from. Before he decided to make this trek, a Talmud came to Rabbi Nachman and he said, "Rebbe, I have a question for you. We know that you can be masig anything that you want, wherever you are. Meaning to say, you can be zocha to the lights of Keser, you can be zocha to the lights of Chachma, you can be zocha to the lights of Bina, you can be zocha to the Midos, you can be zocha to all of the rectifications that you need to do." Why do we know this? There's countless Torahs in Rabbi Nachman where he says that the Makom Ha'olam is in truth within the heart of a Yid, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is found within the heart of each and every Yid in the Nakuda of the Shechina. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not within the place of the world, but rather HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the place of the world. Ein Ha'olam Makomo, Ela Hu Makomo Shel Olam. And mishi yesh lo leiv ha'Yisraeli ein shayach lo makom klal. And somebody who has a heart of a Jewish person, ein shayach lo makom klal. There's no actual spatial coordinates, and a person can make Eretz Yisrael wherever they are, and a person can tap into the deep yichud wherever they are. So based on all of those principles, that a person need not go anywhere. So then, why is it, says his Talmud, that you have to go to Eretz Yisrael? You could be zocha to everything here. And Rebbe Nachman responded to his Talmud, and he said, "You're right. I can be zocha to everything here. In Chutz La'aretz, I can be zocha to the lights of Keser, to the uncovering of the Ratzon HaNe'elam, and the Tainug HaAmiti, and the Mesiras Nefesh, and I can be zocha to the Bittul B'Metzias of Chachma, and the Bittul Hayesh of Bina. I can." But Rebbe Nachman says the only difference is that here in Chutz La'aretz, I can receive the lights without the engarbment of those lights within Levushim. And it's only in Eretz Yisrael that I have the ability of drawing the lights into the Levushim themselves. So we see from here, Rabbi Nachman is describing something fundamental, that Eretz Yisrael is the place where the Levushim, the garments that conceal in order to reveal and that contain the potency of the light so that they can be revealed in manageable ways, the tzimtzumim and the gvuros and the kalim, which are the Levushim, that's what can be revealed in Eretz Yisrael. In Chutz La'aretz, the or is there. The oros are there. I could be zocha to all of the oros. Keser, Chachma, and Bina, anything that I want, I could be zocha to. But in order to draw those oros into vessels and levushim that contain them and allow them to be revealed in imaginable, real, embodied way, that a person has to go to Eretz Yisrael for. So Rabbi Nachman says that the entire purpose that he wants to go to Eretz Yisrael is in order to be zocha to the levushim, to the secret of halbasha. Now, we said already, and we spoke about it last week, that halbasha, in garments, are not simply clothing, but garments represent a spiritual principle and a paradoxical way in which Hashem reveals his infinite light to us. Lights and vessels are two contradictory things. Light has the properties of its source, which is infinite. Light left to its own will express itself without limit, and it will just exhaust itself until the very nth degree, just like water that flows forward without any constriction. Lights do not need to apply themselves to lived reality. Lights can be transcendental ideals that feel good, that make me feel okay in my mind, but they don't have to actually have an impact on my day-to-day life. They're makifim. Lights are refinement that need not apply themselves in accordance to the vessels of this worldly experience or to human experience. Vessels are the containment devices, those things that somehow, some way have the unique capacity to contain the infinite light, to contain it without reducing it, but to contain it so as to allow it to shape itself and express itself in particularized ways, which now become expressible down here. That's the purpose of kalim. Too much or without kalim is a shvira. It's riboy oros. There's too much light and there's nothing practical about it. Too much kalim without lights is just pure practicality without any vitality inside of it. But the secret balance is the or within the kli itself. When the or has the ability to rest within the kli is the levush. The kli is the garment. Just as the body dresses itself up so that it can reveal itself for the day, so too the or reveals itself within the kli so that it can reveal itself. And the work of the kli is in fact more wondrous than the work of the light, because the light just has to do one thing. The light has to just reveal itself endlessly. It maintains its self-identity, endless light. The process of the kli, or the emergence of a garment, is a doubled secret, because the garment itself is not opposite from the light, because it emerges from the light, because everything emerges from light. But at the same point, it needs to do something that's opposite its essence, which is conceal the light rather than reveal itself. And so the light is purely revelatory, but it's the vessel and the garment that contains and it holds. And there we have to come upon real chachma to understand how it is that Hashem allowed for kalim to come into the world. Oros, we can understand. Hashem is Or Ein Sof. For there to be light, that's not so difficult. All of the nations have some access to some light of bittul on the level of transcendence. From that perspective of nothingness, of course, nothingness can apply itself everywhere. But the question of the emergence of somethingness from within nothingness, the emergence of the kli from within the light, as the Arizal describes, that's already a question. Because now we're grappling with the secret of a limited thing that seems to emerge. But this limited thing is not the opposite of that which is unlimited, but rather it is somehow, some way, paradoxically going to reveal the unlimited through its own limitation. The secret of the kli, the secret of the levush, is a garment that conceals in order to reveal, that hides in order to shine. Because as we know, the light is infinite in its essence, and left to its own devices, it has no capacity of being revealed in any formidable or graspable way. It's only through the containment within the particular measure and the midos of the tzimtzum of the levush, the garment or the kli, that the light can now actually convey itself downwards without overwhelming the recipient, and now it can be conveyed in a bite-sized, manageable way, and there can actually be an accomplishment of that light. That light can have a pu'ula, that light can have an impact on reality. The impact on reality only happens once there is this intermediary shape that allows for the infinite light to accord itself to the measurements of reality. And that's the secret of a kli. The Ramak, the Arizal, they both write, the Arizal says it in the name of the Ramak, that when it comes to halbasha, when it comes to the secret of engarbment, we're dealing with a perpetual paradox, that the he'elem is the gilui and the gilui is the he'elem. The concealment is the revelation, and the revelation is concealment. Now, based on what we just said, let's understand that deeply. We're talking about trying to reveal the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is fundamentally revealed, that's a concealment for us because we can't grasp it. But when the light of the infinite is concealed, that enables us to receive it in a manageable way. And so, ha'elem hu hagiloi, the containment and the hiding of the infinite light is what allows the infinite light to reveal itself. The hagiloi hu ha'elem, and the revelation of the infinite light on its own without vessels is the concealment because it can't be grasped. So now we see that the levush, the garment, the kli, the tzimtzum, has a dual role that it needs to play, which means that it has to contain within itself a far greater spiritual potency than even the or itself does. And this is what's explained in Chasidus at length, that the shoresh of the kalim are rooted in truth in a higher place, even higher than the or. That the secret of containing the infinite by way of this finite expression from within the infinite is a deeper paradox, and it's more reflective of Hashem's infinite light than the simple expression and unfolding of the infinite light itself. That the tzimtzum precedes the emergence of light, that the tzimtzum is, in one degree or another, the deepest secret and the only secret that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealing to us. That's the levush, that's the ingarbing. And so we see that Rebbe Nachman's entire journey was to learn the secret of halbashas ha'oros, of drawing down the lights in an imaginable way, in a manageable way. That's number one. That's the first statement that Rebbe Nachman gave with regards to the reason for his need to travel to Eretz Yisrael, which ultimately becomes the instigator to the Machlokes, or that brings about the gift of the Machlokes with the Shpoler Zeide. The second statement in Chaya Maharan that really mimics the first one, but it reveals a little bit more of the Seder HaHishtalshelus and the Kabbalah behind it, is that Rabbi Nachman said that over here in Chutz La'aretz, I've been zochet to Chachma Tata. I've been zochet to the lower form of Chachma, a lower form of wisdom. But the only way that I'm truly going to be able to be zochet to the Chachma Ilah, to the highest level of wisdom, is going to be by way of going to Eretz Yisrael. That there's a lower wisdom and there's a higher wisdom. And that lower wisdom is accessible in Chutz La'aretz, and the higher wisdom is only accessible in Eretz Yisrael. Now, if we're going to align these two statements, one against the other, what we're going to see is as follows. That what Rabbi Nachman was zochet to in Chutz La'aretz is the or, which is Chachma Tata, the lower level of wisdom. And what Rabbi Nachman wants to be zochet to and wants to uncover in Eretz Yisrael is the or within the kalim, and phrased differently, Chachma Ilah. Because the lower level of Chachma is plain or, the way Hashem reveals himself without constriction. That's what Rabbi Nachman was able to be zochet to anywhere. But to reveal the higher level of Chachma, the Chachma Ilah, which is the fact that Hashem's light and Chachma can express itself even within concealment, that's only accessible in Eretz Yisrael. That's only accessible in Eretz Yisrael. So we see two things from these places in Chaya Maharan. That Rabbeinu wants to go to Eretz Yisrael in order to draw the lights into the vessels so that they can be revealed. And this drawing of the light down into the vessels is in fact a deepening and an expansion and a multiplication of the original light. Because the light, when it's revealed without vessels, okay, that's not such a chiddush. That's plain chachma. That's plain bittul. That's plain nothingness. But to reveal Chachma Ilah is to reveal the ability for nothingness to reveal itself within somethingness and still remain nothingness. And that was the journey that Rebbe Nachman wanted to go into for Eretz Yisrael. That's what Rebbe Nachman wanted to do and accomplish in Eretz Yisrael. So we see that really what Rebbe Nachman is doing on our level of understanding, is that he's operating at a certain point of wholeness, so to say, of a level of chachma and a level of or in Chutz La'aretz. But that wholeness is deficient if it can't reveal itself in its opposite, in the territory of constriction, in the territory of concealment. And therefore, Rabbi Nachman sets out on his journey to draw the original light of Chachma and the original light of oneness and goodness down into vessels, which are the process of multiplicity, so that we can come out on the other side with a much more profound level of Chachma, which is Chachma Ilah, which is now aware of its capacity to survive even the descent into constriction. This brings to mind something that Rabbi Nachman himself says after his arrival in Eretz Yisrael, that we know, like we said, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh also tried to make the journey to Eretz Yisrael. But the reason the Baal Shem Tov wasn't able to make the journey, and according to the words of Rabbi Nachman, not that we have an understanding of this, is because Eretz Yisrael is the godless shebegodless. It's the greatness of greatness. It's the fullest expression of goodness imaginable, not just good, but very good. It's a goodness that is uncovered in its true level of potency, specifically through the apparent contradiction that forces it to unfold itself with even more ferocity in the secret of Tov Ma'od. Tov ha'aretz ma'od ma'od. That's the godless shebegodless. And in order to reach the godless shebegodless, in order to reach the greatness of the greatness, a person has to go through katnus shebekatnus, the smallness of smallness. We know that there's stages of katnus and godless, smallness and greatness. We also know that each stage contains every other thing within itself. So within smallness, there's the smallness of smallness and the greatness of smallness. And within greatness, there's the smallness of greatness and the greatness of greatness. Now, in order to receive the greatness of greatness, the fullest measure of greatness, one must first and foremost encounter the lowest level of lowness, the katnus shebekatnus. And says Rabbi Nachman that the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh was capable of entering into the territory of katnus. He entered into the territory of katnus, but that was only the godless shebekatnus. That was only the first level of katnus. And then we saw by the seventh day of Pesach, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh had to turn back because he knew that Rabbi Nachman would come about to fix what he needed to fix. But because the Baal Shem Tov was only able to enter into the greatness of smallness, so he only merited the smallness of greatness, which was not entering into Eretz Yisrael. But because I, says Rabbi Nachman, am able to enter into the katnus shebekatnus, I'm able to enter into the smallness of the smallness, I was meritorious of the greatness of the greatness. And so we see that this process away from Chutz La'aretz towards Eretz Yisrael is a descent into the smallness of the smallness, a descent into the vessels. But at the very same point, this descent is ultimately for the sake of an ascent, because what it's going to reveal is the Chachma Ilah, the greatness Sheba greatness. That's the three teachings that we have that we're going to be discussing today about Rabbi Nachman's journey to Eretz Yisrael. Now, the Shpoler Zeide, the Heilige Shpoler Zeide, is a secret of Zeh Shekana Chachma. A zaken, Rabbi Nachman always refers to the Shpoler Zeide as the zaken. Zaken is Zeh Shekana Chachma. The Shpoler Zeide represents the light of Chachma. What's the light of Chachma? We've discussed so often the light of Chachma. The light of Chachma is the light of the universal. The light of Chachma is the light of illumination and ease. It's or without a kli. It's the greatness without the need to descend down into smallness. It's the recognition, very similar to what the Baal Shem Tov was trying to bring out, that Hashem, the only hope that we possibly have is from you. And human involvement and human effort needs to be really relegated to the side, because the human effort that we have to put in, the processing that we have to put in, is not the main thing. The main thing is you, Hashem. That's the main argument that we could always make, is to rely on you. The Shpoler Zeide wanted to bring about Nisim Giluyim. The stories about the Shpoler Zeide are the stories of a tzaddik on the level of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, able to shift his space from one moment to the next, able to bring down new revelations unheard of, able to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu eye to eye based on someone who knew the true value and the true greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Shpoler Zeide spoke of a world where all that existed was the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no Yetzer Hara, no difficulty, no struggle. He didn't want to pay attention to the struggle. He just wanted to alleviate the struggle. He would turn to Hashem and say, alleviate the struggle that the Jews are in. Fix this problem, and the problem would be fixed. The Shpoler Zeide was a light of Chachma. The Shpoler Zeide was a light of illumination of a darga of Ein Od Milvado, that there was literally nothing that was away from the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even the foreign houses of judgment, even the enemies of the Jewish people, there was nothing that the Shpoler Zeide was afraid of. Nothing the Shpoler Zeide was afraid of, because everything was the level of Chachma revealed. The Shpoler Zeide didn't want to come down into this world. The Shpoler Zeide tells the story of the emergence of his soul, and he says that he was waiting upstairs for 3 generations already. He didn't want to come back down until the Malachim said, Shpoler Zeide, you have to go back down, you're getting kicked out of Gan Eden. And he said, kick me out of Gan Eden, I'm not going back down. This is the level of Chachma that doesn't want to deal with constriction, that doesn't want to descend into smallness, that doesn't want to tolerate discrepancy. It's not worth it. The danger is too real. I can't forget the ayin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for a second. And the Shpoler Zeide refused to come down until he saw a man, with a shovel, an iron shovel on his shoulders. And this man with the iron shovel on his shoulders looked at him and he says, younger man, you're still here? You're still here? Get down there. We have work to do. And that's when the Shpoler Zeide decided to come down. But the Shpoler Zeide was a level of Chachma that didn't want to come down into this world. And it was the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh who brought the Shpoler Zeide down into this world. The Shpoler Zeide's father was an Einikel of the Maharal of Prague, Ben Achar Ben of the Maharal of Prague, the light of Mashiach ben David, the light of Chachma. And he had an inn, and in this inn, there were 2 special things that he would do. Number 1 is that he would make sure to attend to the needs of each and every one of his guests. And number 2 is that he had separate buildings for men and women unless there was a family with a child. If the family was there with a child, so then he would have them be in the same place. And the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh was prior to Revelation, and he was wandering on one of his journeys, and he came upon this inn of the Shpoler Zeide's father, and he had a room. And because he was concealing himself, the Shpoler Zeide's father didn't know who this person was. He didn't know the level of tzidkus. Until at night, when he ran around to see that everything was okay, he saw a profound illumination coming from the room that the Baal Shem Tov was staying in. An illumination that was so strange that he was concerned that there was a fire. And so he ran and he knocked on the door to see. And as he was knocking on the door, he heard conversations behind the door. And the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh opened his door and he saw Eliyahu Hanavi there. And suddenly the Shpoler Zeide's father realized that, oh my gosh, this is someone big. And the Baal Shem Tov said, I'm going to give you a bracha on a few accounts. Number 1 is you can't reveal who I am. You were meritorious to see that I've been with Eliyahu Hanavi, so I see that you're a holy person. I also very much respect the way that you run the tznius in the place that you've run it. And as a result of this, if you can follow this, I'm going to give you a gift of a son, a neshama of your family, the Maharal of Prague, who hasn't come down yet, who's been waiting to come down. And the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says, I'm going to return and I'll be a guest at his bris. I'm going to be a guest at his bris. But remember, you can't point me out because I want to remain hidden. And lo and behold, the Shpoler Zeide's father had a son, and it was the Shpoler Zeide. And because the Shpoler Zeide's father wanted to make sure that this person would be here, invited all of the aniyim of the town to come. And when he noticed him in the back, he realized who it was, and he said that he wasn't going to say anything. And all of the aniyim of the town were able to give a bracha to this neshama, to the Shpoler Zeide. When it came to the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh said to him, "Va'Avraham zakin ba b'yamim," that Avraham was old, and he elongated his days, he extended his days, and he found goodness in his days. And this neshama is going to grow up to be the Zeide of the Jewish people. That's the neshama of the Shpoler Zeide. This light of Zesha Kana Chachma, this light of Chachma, of a bittul b'metzias. Now, Chachma is or without a lavush. Chachma is plain, Chachma Tata. Chachma corresponds to the world of Atzilus. Chachma corresponds to the world of divine purity and clarity that knows no distinction and no separation. The purpose of creation, the purpose of all things, is to reveal the true potency of Chachma. What's the true potency of Chachma? So we've said that Chachma reveals itself in absolute clarity. It doesn't want distortion. It doesn't want distinction. It doesn't want separation. It just wants that which is revealed. It doesn't want to deal with Churban. It doesn't want to deal with Tisha B'Av. like the Shpoler Zeide who tried to be Mevatel Tisha B'Av. That there was a bris on Erev Tisha B'Av, and the Shpoler Zeide demanded that the Chevra go get beer and more beer and more beer and more beer and more beer until they were intoxicated and asleep. And came along Kinos and Eicha, the Shpoler Zeide walks into the empty room and he says, Rebbe Nachman, everyone's too tired and drunk to give you Kinos tonight or to give you Eicha, just give us redemption. This was the line of reasoning that the Shpoler Zeide always went with, which was just reveal pure Chachma, reveal pure goodness. But the tachlis of Chachma is not to remain only in goodness, because that's only ayin, that's only the world of Atzilus. The tachlis of Chachma is to go down into the worlds of separation, into the worlds of concealment, to engarb itself within levushim, to reveal that it can take on forms of containment, and it can encounter its opposite. And not only will it not lose its essential self, but it will be magnified even more so to the level of Keser. That by schlepping Chachma down from the world of Atzilus into the territory of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, we then have the ability of ascending upwards to the world of Adam Kadmon, which is the place of Keser, which reveals the unity of Ani, of Bina, and the Ayin of Chachma at once. Phrased differently, the Chachma of the world of Atzilus knows no distortion and it knows no distinction. The vessels on the level of Atzilus are nullified to a degree that they're considered as if they're oros. It cannot tolerate constriction, it cannot tolerate levushim. But the goal is to force Chachma to come down into levushim, into the territory of Bina. The levush of Chachma is Bina. Bina is the constricted mind of concealing that infinite light of Chachma. And we drag Chachma into Bina, because once Chachma can reveal itself in Bina, once the world of Atzilus can reveal itself within the worlds of separation, once clarity can reveal itself within the worlds of constriction, then there's a third principle that's revealed, which is the interiority of Chachma, which is the interiority of Keser, which is the secret of Reish Lois Yada. That the Tachlis Habriya is to go down from the Chachma of the world of Atzilus into the broken territory of the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, which is the territory of Bina, but to be refined there so that it can ascend back upwards, back into its original starting point, which was Chachma. But now, instead of being limited because it can't tolerate constriction, it can uncover a new level in the interiority of Chachma itself, which is the interiority of Atik Yoimin, which is the secret of Reshad Loas Yada, which is the secret of Aniva Ayin Bevasachas, which is the secret of Keser, which is the secret of Chachma Ilah, or the secret of lights in vessels. So the purpose is for Chachma of Atzilus to be dragged down into the Bina of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, so that it can ascend upwards once again and reveal the Keser of Adam Kadmon. The world of Atzilus cannot tolerate the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. It cannot tolerate constriction or concealment. The worlds of constriction and concealment cannot tolerate, and they cannot function in the territory of absolute revelation. But the world of Keser, the world of Adam Kadmu, that goes all the way up and all the way down at the same time. It reveals the deep unity between Chachma and Bina. That's the Tachlis. Before Eretz Yisrael, before Rebbe Nachman decided to go down into Eretz Yisrael in the hopes of uncovering the secret of the Halbasha, of revealing how Chachma can descend down into the nether realms of concealment so that it can reveal its true potency in the Pnimius of Chachma, which is the Pnimius of Atik, which is the full potency of Chachma once it reveals that it can undergo a descent and still remain itself, that the bittul of HaKadosh Baruch Hu still remains, that the light still remains even in the vessels. Before the trip to Eretz Yisrael, which was to draw the Chachma down into vessels. So there was no Machlokes between the Chachma of the Shpoler Zeide and the light of Rebbe Nachman, because the light of Rebbe Nachman had not yet revealed itself to be what it is. It's only as the result of this Yerida from Chutz La'aretz into Eretz Yisrael that Rabbi Nachman goes down in order to drag the true light of Chachma out of itself from the Chachma Tata to reveal the true potency of Chachma, which is Chachma Ilah, which is the secret of Keser. That decision that Rabbi Nachman made to go to Eretz Yisrael is what creates the Machlokes, because that decision for Rabbi Nachman to go to Eretz Yisrael is ultimately the process in which Tzimtzum begins to reveal itself within the Chachma, and the Chachma is forced to go down into the territory of Bina, because it's specifically within the territory of Bina that the true lights of Keser are going to be revealed. That just as Rabbi Nachman's desire to go to Eretz Yisrael is to schlep Chachma into Bina so that it can reveal the true potency of Chachma, which is Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, which is the secret of Reish Lois Yada. So too, the Shpoler Zeide And the trip of Rabbi Nachman's process into Eretz Yisrael is the attempt to awaken the true depths and the true potency of the Shpoler Zeide's Chachma by way of schlepping it into a territory that is opposite itself, which is the secret of Machlokes. And then specifically from within that Machlokes, there's going to be the true Giloi of Chachma, which is the unity between these two tzadikim. Rav Avram ben Rav Nachman spends so much time telling us that the shoresh of Rabbi Nachman is in Bina. That Rabbi Nachman's light is a light of constriction. It's a light that goes down specifically into the territory of concealment and darkness and constriction and closeness. It's a light that schleps itself down into the world of feeling things and vulnerable heartbrokenness and a leiv basar and an opening of the self to human experience. Rabbi Nachman represents the light of tshuva. He represents the light of the tikkun klali, which starts with a capital of Bina. The whole light of Rabbi Nachman is the Bina that forces Chachma to come down into lower places so that it can go up again and reveal the true light of Keser. Ani ish pela v'nishmasi pela gadol. Nishmasi is Bina. The neshama is on the level of Bina. But my neshama, says Rabbi Nachman, is there to reveal the pela. What's the pela? The pela is the light of Keser. And it just so happens that the Shpoler Zeide also, the books that we have about the Shpoler Zeide are the Niflos HaZeide, the Ish Pella, that they're both working together to reveal the Pella Elyon, which is the unity of Chachma and Bina. So Rabbi Nachman is the Bina to the Shpoler Zeide's Chachma. But the Shpoler Zeide is only, at first, it's the external level of Chachma, because it's not a Chachma that feels that it can reveal itself within constriction yet. It's only the descent of Rabbi Nachman into Eretz Yisrael where Bina begins to reveal itself, which is drawing down the lights into the Levushim, in order to reveal the true potency of Chachma Ilah, which is Chachma drawn into Bina, then going back up to Keser. So Rabbi Nachman represents the Levushim in which the light of the Shpoler Zeide is going to have to go down in order to reveal its true potency. That the Machlokes is there to awaken Chachma from its basic status, which is just everything is fine, everything is good, there's no constriction. And to awaken a machlokes, to reveal that Chachma actually can descend down into the opposite of itself. Because from that place, we're going to go into the true level of Chachma, which is Pnimius Chachma, which is Pnimius Atik, which is the light of Keser, which is the tachlis of what all things are coming to reveal. So that the entire process of Rabbi Nachman creating this machlokes is to awaken Chachma of the Shpoler Zeide from its previous level and to force it to come to terms with its true potency, which is the unification that Chachma can have with Bina, which is going to be the illumination of the Keser Elyon Alav Nikra, which is the secret of Reshid Lo Asyada, which is the secret of the Gadlus Shebegadlus. So it turns out, based on what we're trying to say, is that the matana that Rabbi Nachman is giving us as a result of the trip to Eretz Yisrael, which is the machlokes between the Shpoler Zeide and Rabbi Nachman, is the awakening of Chachma from its basic status, which is the world of Atzilus, where it operates just as plain light, dragging it down into the territory of Bina in the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, which is ultimately to reveal the true light of Chachma, which is Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, which is the light of Keser, the light of Reshid Lo Asyada. The Shpoler Zeide represents Chachma, and Rabbeinu represents Bina. But Rabbeinu's Bina is a Bina that reveals the light of Keser. And so it's this machlokes which is ultimately going to give us the light of Mashiach Tzidkenu, the unity between Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef, which is the secret of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, who's the yichud of the trained Mashiachin. Moshe Rabbeinu, who's Rosh Tevos Machlokes Shammai v'Hillel, that the true potency of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is that it's above and below, only comes about by the encounter of the machlokes. And this machlokes l'shem Shamayim of Shammai and Hillel is ultimately reflecting itself in the process of the Shpoler Zeide and Rabbi Nachman. It's the descent of the Chachma of the Shpoler Zeide from the world of Atzilus into the Bina of Rabbi Nachman in the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, so that the light of Chachma can undergo the process of revealing its true potency and ascend upwards again into Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, which is the secret of Reshid Lo Asyada, which is the secret of Aniva Ayin B'Vasachas. And this all starts through the process and the journey to Eretz Yisrael, which is just to draw the light into the levush, or force Chachma Tata, which is the Chachma as it operates in its plain state, into the level of Chachma Ilah, which is the true potency of Chachma, which is once Chachma has been shown through the levushim of Bina. For the Bal HaSulam, in the writings of the Bal HaSulam, it's very important for us to understand that Bina is not something opposite to Chachma. That Bina is this very potency of Chachma to reveal itself in a new way that prior to the Tzimtzum remained completely contained and subjugated within Chachma itself. In the secret of Shraga B'Tehira Mayahani, when there's an illumination and light, what value is there for a candle? The candle is Bina within Chachma, the Havein b'Chachma, the potentiation towards limitation that exists within the unlimited nature of Chachma. But as long as all that exists is Chachma, that shorish of Bina is nullified. It's only when there's an awakening and a stirring and an emergence of that koyach of Bina from within the edge of Chachma, so that it can emerge in opposition to Chachma, that we're then going to be able to process and begin to uncover the true light of Keser. That Bina emerges from within the very end of Chachma so that it can instantiate itself as this oppositional force, which seems to be the polar opposite of Chachma. But its true essence is just that it's a shliach of Chachma itself, so that Chachma can now be forced to reveal its true potency, which is that it can tolerate itself within the levushim of Bina as well, which is the secret of Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius of Atik. And so we see that in truth, this unfolding Machlokes is not simply two separate elements, but there was a yichud between the two of them. Prior to the entrance into Eretz Yisrael, prior to Bina awakening itself from within the womb of Chachma, there is peace between Chachma and Bina because Bina is nullified within the light of Chachma. It's only when Bina begins to emerge, which is the descent and the trip that Rabbeinu goes on to Eretz Yisrael, which is for the sake of drawing the light into the vessel and uncovering the true potency of Chachma, which can reveal itself on the level of Keser, which is the secret of Machlokes. It's only there that the light of the Shpoler Zeide is going to be forced to reveal itself on its highest level, which is Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, which are the Nisim on the level of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. But now it's not going to be in contradistinction to the effort of Bina and the effort of the work that Rebbe Nachman reveals to us, but it's going to be in unison with it. It's going to be the secret of the unity between Chachma and Bina. Rav Yitzchak Shlita said last year in his room, and it was written and it's going to be published in the Shirim in the second volume of Yam HaChachma and Chayei Maharan, that Rabbeinu writes in Chayei Maharan that once he understood the level of the Shpoler Zeide, Zeshakana Chachma, that light of Chachma, once he understood the level of the Shpoler Zeide, he stopped talking about him. He didn't want to talk about him anymore. And what the Rebbe said in his office is as follows. He says, the true darga of the Shpoler Zeide is Pnimius Chachma, which is Pnimius Atik. That ultimately the Shpoler Zeide is a Chachma, and the true potency that rests at the heart of Chachma is Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, which is the secret of this and that together as one, of concealment and revelation working together in unison to reveal the fundamental unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Pela Elyon, the Mafli La'asos, that he can be revealed in Chachma and Bina. That place of Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik is what we refer to as Reshad Lo Asyada, the unknowable head. That place, the highest place that we're trying to get to, wherein everything is unified as one, and all that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealing is his Hashra'ah, the Sha'ashuim Atzmiyim, that playfulness from within the contraction and the contradiction, from within those difficult places. Rabbi Nachman understood that this was the Tachlis, that's what the Shpoler Zeide is. And when it comes to Reshad Lo Asyada, there's a klal called Sveikos to Reshad Lo Asyada. You can't know where it's holding. It's like the kever of Moshe Rabbeinu, which represents Reshad Lo Asyada, that unknowable place, the highest point within the soul, the highest point within reality, the highest point of Emunah, the highest point of Sha'ashuim Atzmiyim, Sha'ashui Emunah, the playfulness of Emunah, of coming closer and closer and closer and closer and closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu over and over and over, reconnecting ourselves with more Emunah, more Emunah. To those who are below, it appears that they're above. To those who are above, it appears that they're below. And therefore, it's always shifting in its orientation. There's a rule of undecidability over there because it's everything as one and it appears in accordance to the conception of the individual. And therefore, because the Shpoler Zeide represents this place of Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Atik, and over there, there's a klal of Sveikos de Radla, and you can't describe or determine what they are, therefore, Rabbeinu stops speaking about it. And so we have Mufurash Yotze Mipia Kohen Gadol from the Rebbe Shlita himself, who explains that the whole tachlis of this Machlokes is to reveal and to schlep the light of that original Chachma of the Shpoler Zeide, which couldn't express itself within limitation, and to undergo the process and the shift down, down, down into the territories of Bina, into the chamber of changing colors, only to ascend up again with that true light of the Yichud between the two of them, which is the secret of Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius to Atik. And what we're going to see next week, Amir Hashem, or this week, is how all of this comes closer and closer to the Nakuda of Malchus. Because in truth, this Nakuda of Reshad Lois Yada is Malchus. What we're trying to reveal is Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Malchus of Or Ein Sof Kavyachol, the first instantiation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Ratzon to be a Melech in this world. And we know that Malchus is Gnuza Biradla. That Malchus, the lowest place, once it can undergo this conflict between Abba and Ima, between Chachma and Bina, it can then ascend once again to that place of Keser, into that place of Reshad Lois Yada. And we're going to see how, in truth, the entire Nekudas Machlokes, which takes shape in Eretz Yisrael, which is the secret of Malchus, is about how to be Misyaches to Malchus, how to be Misyaches to constriction and concealment in this world. Chachma, in the beginning, only looks at Panemius of Malchus. At the Panemius of Malchus, it's the Shechina Tuzo Begoivim Miroimim. Everything is revealed, everything is clarified, everything is beautiful, everything is one, and the Shechina is Miyuchad and Mechuber, Betachlis, Ha'achtos, to the Shorish of all things. And that place in Panemius of Malchus, the innermost point of Nishmas Yisrael, it's a direct, straight trip up to Kodesh HaKadoshim. And Chachma always looks down there. Chachma wants to deal with that place. But the Chitzonius HaMalchus, which is the ugliness and the difficulties and the struggles and the processing that take shape for Malchus in the worlds of separation, that's what Bina is Misyaches to. And so we're going to see how ultimately the main Machlokes between Chachma and Bina is how we deal with Malchus. That Chachma just wants to deal with Pnimius of Malchus. It only wants to look at that which is good. It only wants Nisim immediately. It doesn't want Yegia. It doesn't want to schlep down into constriction. But Bina wants the benefit of working on the Chitzonius of Malchus, which is all of the struggles and all of the difficulties and all of the Yegia and all of the Tefillah and all of the Tshuva and all of the working and the constriction and the concealment and the Katnish Shebekatnis. Because once we can reveal within the Chitzonius of Malchus the light of Chachma, then we can reveal the greatness of Keser Elyon, that it can be revealed even in the thickness of this worldliness. And so we're going to see how the Iker Nekudas HaMachlokes between the Shpoler Zeide and Rabbeinu is ultimately about the Nekuda of Malchus, which is really nothing other than the Machlokes that Chachma and Bina have with regards to Malchus, which is, do we relate to the Chitzonius HaMalchus, like Bina, like Rabbeinu, go through the struggle to reveal the light? Or are we going to operate like the Chachma, like the sadikim of Chachma, who are afraid of going down into the light, into the darkness, because they're afraid they'll lose the light, and all they want to do is be Misyaches to the Pnimius of Malchus. And we're going to see, based on this, how we can understand the words of the Heilige Na'arei Eish, that the beginning of the Machlokes started by Kiddush HaLevana, that the Shpoler Zeide and Rebbe Nachman were doing Kiddush Levana. And for whatever reason, unbeknownst to us, the Shpoler Zeide looked at Rebbe Nachman before his journey to Eretz Yisrael, and he said, Nishta Zoi Nachman Leben Nishta Zoi. It's not like that, Nachman, my beloved. It's not like that. And this was the beginning of the Machlokes. Why? Because the Machlokes is ultimately on the Nekuda of Malchus. And this is going to bring us into Rosh Hashanah, which is ultimately going to bring us to the story of the spider and the fly, which is all about this Machlokes Be'ezras Hashem.